Hey, everybody, welcome back to the press. I'm Ryan Ballinger. It's good to have you with us for our second show of the week relating to the PGA Tour. We don't normally do these, right? We get 4 times a year where we get these Oppo events, and this week is one of them. Our first show of the week was about the Arnold Palmer Invitational, the signature event down in Orlando, Florida at Bay Hill. But our second event of the week is the Puerto Rico Open, played at Grand Reserve Golf Club on the island of Puerto Rico in the town of Rio Grande in Puerto Rico. So we're going to get into it here today. We'll talk about this tournament specifically, and then we'll have a third show this week. Typically, we try to do 2, but we'll have a third show this week where we will talk about Live Hong Kong, the Korn Ferry Tour in Chile, the LPGA Tour in China at the Blue Bay LPGA, and then the DP World Tour / Sunshine Tour in Johannesburg for the Joburg Open. So, without further ado, let's get into the particulars about the Puerto Rico Open. So, this is a 132-player event. Last year was 120. And then they had to, I believe they expanded it last year, but they intended to be 120. But they want to make sure that everybody that is a Korn Ferry Tour grad, DP World Tour grad, or a Q School grad and wants to get in these things, gets in these things. So they went to 132. And they're playing for a $4 million purse, $720,000 to the champion, 300 FedEx Cup points to the winner. This place is called Grand Reserve Golf Club. Used to be called Trump International Puerto Rico many years ago before Trump stopped paying the licensing agreement, or someone stopped paying the licensing agreement. I forget how that exactly worked, but there was an issue over the licensing agreement that it became Grand Reserve Golf Club. This place was opened in 2006. There are 36 holes here. I actually played this place, played the Puerto Rico Open Pro-Am in, I think it was 21, 19, somewhere around there. It wasn't the COVID year, but it was in and around there. Maybe it was 2019. I love Puerto Rico. Beautiful place. Love San Juan. But this is about 30, 45 minutes away. So it's a Tom Kite design on the championship course, 7502 from the tips. Especially in the back 9, it plays more toward the water. Last like 4 or 5 holes really gets closer. I'll say last 6 holes really get closer to the water where you feel that wind a little bit more. Your front 9, you're really playing more out toward mountain, volcanic looking areas. Much calmer, a little bit easier to negotiate. The tee shots they're not especially wide, but they're not especially narrow. It's kind of a mix between a good challenging championship course, obviously with the length, but also some kind of resort component to it. It is a kind of country club place anyhow. So it's a mixture, but which we're going to find talking about this tournament is it really favors nobody. All kinds of different players have won here. The bad thing is if you have to come back and defend, which Bryce Garnett does, he won here last year. You don't want to be back here. In a perfect world, you play in this tournament once or never, and if you win it, you never have to come back. So we'll talk about that over the course of our show. Let's first start talking about the opening lines for this week. These were delayed by a day. Most of the lines were not out. At least I didn't see them yesterday, which is why we kind of had to wait to Tuesday to do the show this week. That's primarily because they were still getting the Monday qualifiers together. Typically, they do the Monday qualifier ahead of time. They did not do that this week. They had the 4 spot on actual Monday, not the week before, probably because of cognizant. I really don't know why they didn't do it that way. However, we've got our full 132 player field. Now, you're going to notice you've got some potential value on the board here to start the week. Top of the table, Nicholas Norgard, 20-1. He's your favorite. You're going to see he shows out very well in our model. He's played very well in the DP World Tour, trying to make the conversion here to the PGA Tour. I think he's got the game, and I think you're going to notice that a lot of the DP World Tour players, DP World Tour grads, are going to get extra respect here in the lines this week. Just kind of tends to happen in this tournament. Also tends to happen in the Dominican Republic, and maybe because that's somewhat of results. I mean, you'll see a couple of European winners here in the recent past. You also see it in the Dominican Republic as well at the Punta Cana Championship. So I think there's probably a little extra love for those players this week. Ryan Gerard's next back's 22-1. I'm probably going to start with him here this week. I like Ryan Gerard's game. He is consistent. He has played well on the PGA Tour. Almost got the special temporary status turned into a PGA Tour card a couple of years ago. Then went to the Korn Ferry Tour last year. Won, played well, played consistently, got his card through that top 30. Has been playing pretty well so far this year. Has a mixture of experience and youth. Frankly, I kind of like to see here. Rico Hoey, 25-1, I think is going to get a lot of play this week. He played very well at PGA National. He's played pretty well, really, the last 4 or 5 months by his standard. The thing that's really kind of, I think, going to buoy people betting him this week is something that was really horrible about last week, which was that he lost something like 6 strokes putting to the field at PGA National and still had a great week. So all you got to do is straighten that out a little bit. You got a chance. So I can see why people are going to bet him 25-1. But Collie always seems to kind of play in these events, 28-1. Kevin Roy's 28-1. He's played pretty well coming off the Korn Ferry Tour. Matty Schmidt, I do like quite a bit here this week at 28-1. If you look at the kind of summation of his good finishes on the PGA Tour and the DP World Tour, tend to be in places like this, longer courses, got to drive the ball, Bermuda or past Palom, a lot of palm trees. I think about his finish, I think it was last year, maybe 2 years ago. I think it was last year on the DP World Tour in the Ana Lucia tournament in Estepona. Played very well on a golf course. It looks a lot like this one, to be honest with you. So I like that. Rasmus Niergaard Pedersen, 28-1. I'm going to pass on. Adam Schenk, I'm going to like at 30-1 here. He does pretty well in my model. So does Chan Kim, for what it's worth. Both guys do well in our model. But I do like Adam Schenk here, having a pretty good kind of bounce back year. Wasn't so good last year, better this year. Hayden Springer, Patrick Fishburne, 30-1. Your defending champion, which you hate to have to say, is 33-1. Bryce Garnett. Matt Wallace, who's won over in the Dominican, 33-1. He won the DP World Tour last season, well, in the fall, I suppose, but he won. He's a guy who can win, and he's a guy who has done it enough times that I think he deserves some credit for it. Adam Svensson, Antoine Rosner, Pearson Coody, 35-1. Of those, I like Pearson Coody. You haven't been paying attention to the Korn Ferry Tour, and I can forgive you if you haven't been, but he had to drop down to the Korn Ferry Tour, lost his PGA Tour card, has been playing well down there. He's, I believe, 8th on their points list right now, and they're through almost 6 events on their season, almost a quarter of the way through the season. So been playing well. He can clearly, somewhat consistently beat that tour. It's where he's trying to make the jump up here. This is a good opportunity this week. I like his chances. Adrian Dumonte Chassart has one of his rare good finishes on the PGA Tour here, 40-1. He's been trying to play wherever he can, play the DP World Tour exemption for guys outside the top 150. He's tried that. He's tried the Korn Ferry Tour. It's a little bit of everything. I think that's not helpful. Ben Coles, Lanto Griffin, 40-1, I kind of like. Michael Thorbjornsen just cannot find his footing. Quade Cummins at 40-1, I like a lot. Our model really likes him, which I was kind of surprised about. Takumi Kanaya models out very well. I like him quite a bit at 40-1. And let's just dig right into the model from there. So if you look at our model, we do this based on 1 and 2 year windows. We do this based on absolute competition and relative competition of what you're going to see this week in terms of official World Golf Ranking field strength. And then we also do last 3 years of this event strokes gained. Well, you don't have that because they don't do international strokes gained typically, especially on the island events. And then you do the last 10 events on the PGA Tour. It used to be last 5. A couple of years ago, we changed that to the last 10. I think that's made the model a little bit stronger. But if you look at the top 10 here, a lot of the guys we just mentioned, we've already talked about. Nicholas Norgard, Chan Kim, Jeremy Paul. I like the German's game a whole lot. Got to know him a little bit better at the Korn Ferry Tour Championship last year in Indiana at French Lake Resort. I like his game. I like what he brings to the table. Quade Cummins, another grad, playing quite well so far this year. Again, we have limited data points about those guys, so take that for what you will. But all the Korn Ferry Tour guys. Blades Brown for the same reason. He's playing pretty well, and he's starting to figure it out, but he's a 17-year-old kid. We don't really have an 18-year-old kid. We don't really have a whole lot of data about him. So that he's 8th in the model is cool, but we're missing a broader data set about him, right? Versus Adam Svensson, we've got plenty of data about. Adam Schenk, plenty of data about. Ryan Gerard, even plenty of data about. Danny Willett, plenty of data about, but we don't see him as frequently. So maybe that's a frequency problem, not necessarily a data problem, a frequency problem. Takumi Kanaya is 6th, and as I mentioned, Ryan Gerard's 10th. So take that a step further. Let's look at our horses for courses for the week. This is a hard one because, as we talked about at the top of the show, if you're looking for a horse for course this week, that's bad, right? We don't want people who have played here a lot. Think about Nico Echeverria, who's won here. He had 2 top 15 finishes. One was a win, one was not. He's out. Ryan Brehm, won here, but then is now on the Korn Ferry Tour right now, just absolutely out of nowhere. You don't want to be on this list unless you are basically Rafa Campos, who's at Bay Hill because he's there, right? I mean, he's going to go play the signature event, qualify for it. He's going to be in it. So he's not playing his national open or Territorial Open, I suppose, this year. So he's not on this list. Martin Laird, Adam Schenk. Adam Schenk kinda, sorta. I mean, doesn't have a ton of history, but I just want to throw him on here. Just kind of not have two sad names on this list, but I will include him. I do like his game here. Let's look at past champions. So I put 6 on here for a couple of different reasons, but one, to really double, triple underscore the point. Randoms win here. If you look of these champions, right, of them, Bryce Garnett's a multi-time winner, not of this event, but in general, but nothing huge here. And I think Dominican, right? So Nico Echeverria has gone on to bigger and better things. He had a really nice fall, had a second win. He's followed it up. I think he's establishing himself as a better player, but definitely a better player than he was when he won here a couple of years ago. Ryan Brem, he's on the Korn Ferry Tour. Not good. So you won, you did nothing with it. Brandon Grace, he's on LIV. This was his last win. So 4 years ago, 2021, just before LIV started, basically, he went over there and won the Puerto Rico Open. Victor Hovland won here. And I very distinctly remember because he said he hated the short game. He's very bad at the short game. I think he said his short game sucks. But, just something to kind of remember. 2 of these guys have gone on to bigger things. Victor Hovland's going to do really big things, right? I mean, he's a world-class player, even though he's also a world-class tinkerer. And then Martin Traynor was the winner here 6 years ago, right? 7 years ago. And, I mean, really, like, Martin Traynor, one of the most random PGA Tour winners in maybe not history, but certainly the last 10 years, and has kind of floated about all kinds of places since, and he's kind of struggled. So list of past champions should inform you to think outside the box a little bit, right? Don't think about the guys who are necessarily the favorites. 2 of them really were kind of favorites, and I would have called Nico Echeverria a surprise winner too. I think he was like 80 or 90 to 1 when he won this thing, and then he took the jump with it. Victor Hovland wasn't. He was expected to win. Brandon Grace was expected to win. He was one of the better players, most experienced players in the field that year, and he parlayed that into a victory. He's final one on the PGA Tour. Let's get into some more betting odds for the week. Again, you're going to see a lot of names you aren't especially familiar with. We're going to try and point out some of them to you. Maybe not necessarily for this week, but for later, but just keeping them on your radar a little bit. Carson Young's been on a nice run, 45 to 1. Joseph Bramlett modeled out pretty well overall. He's 45 to 1. Again, doesn't get a lot of play, but plays pretty well when he does. Big, strong guy, hits the ball pretty far. I think those are benefits here this week. Alejandro Tosti, I think, is going to get a lot of love at 50 to 1. It's a pretty big ballpark. He can hit it pretty far, obviously, goes and lashes after the ball pretty hard. Could be an interesting play. Henrik Norlander almost made the horses for courses slide. He has a couple of good finishes here. I just didn't kind of feel like tipping, like, hey, check him out of the horse for course. He's a guy who perennially sits around 117 to 152 in the FedEx Cup standings and just keeps surviving. I mean, there's a lot to be said for surviving, but that is kind of his business model. Carl Phillips, I love a lot. I love his game a lot. He's going to do well on this tour. I'm convinced. However, he's not doing well on this tour right this second, but it's going to get there. So future weeks, perhaps. Tristan Lawrence, 50 to 1, prolific high finisher on the DP World Tour. Can do it pretty much any event, anytime. Had 4 second-place finishes last year. Gets to this tour. Now he's learning the circuit. I don't know how much this benefits him, but he's played well in the Kenya event. I'm trying to kind of relate weather a little bit somehow. I don't know. Obviously from South Africa, so he can handle wind and heat and stuff like that. Might be an interesting play. I think the value is there because at one time, not too long ago, he was a top 50 player in the world, right? So worth looking at. Jeremy Paul ranked out very well, 60 to 1. I'm probably going to put a little wager on him. Mateo Manacero doesn't hit far enough for me. Neither is Stephen Fisk. Danny Walker's coming off a T13 in Mexico, so perhaps Garrick Hago's been playing a little bit better. Been doing some good work. I do like Robbie Shelton a little bit. He modeled out fairly well, which I was kind of surprised about. Let's go to some more odds. Taylor Montgomery coming in with a major medical extension. Played very well at PGA National. Maybe that continues if he's closer to healthy. Very interesting. Trey Mullinax, I think, got a lot of love in Mexico because he's a bomber, has a decent track record. I think that can apply here. I don't love his game especially. I would leave that alone. Same with Cameron Champ. He's been dropping out of the Korn Ferry Tour. Try to get starts. Has had some good finishes, though. He may be an intriguing player here. Multi-time winner on the PGA Tour. Did play pretty well in his opening couple of starts on the Korn Ferry Tour. in the Bahamas. Again, similar tropical environment. Might be intriguing. Tyler Duncan, 70-1. Just had himself a good week on the Corn Ferry Tour down in Argentina. Probably going to be pretty tired, but has been playing that kind of golf recently. Maybe a guy to look at. Blades Brown at 80-1. I'm just not betting on a guy that young without that much experience, even though he models out very well. And I'll probably have egg on my face at the end. Marty Laird, 80-1. Horse for course player, plays the wind pretty well. Multi-time PGA Tour winner. Not for me, but I get it. Russell Knox has been playing really well on the Corn Ferry Tour so far this year. Great runs in a number of events. I am intrigued by him at 90-1. Tim Vieding was kicking ass on the Corn Ferry Tour last year. Cannot find it right now. Same with Harry Higgs. I like their games because of what they did last year, but if you were to bet on them, the current circumstances would be a hard pass. Justin Hastings really models out very well. We don't have a ton of data about him, but he sure models out pretty well. I probably will put a couple dollars on him at 100-1. Matt Neesmith has decent finish here, but just one. Again, he really hasn't had to be here the last couple of years. Does now. What does that say about where his game is? And then if you're trying to look for like a random, maybe it's a Brandt Snedeker because he's pretty much kind of done it all. He's just trying to nurse his career to get to the Champions Tour where he's probably going to destroy everybody. But could be a little wily this week if 151. I'm not going to bet on him. I'm just trying to think about maybe a Bryce Garnett kind of guy that could win this thing. That's not 33-1. And there's that guy right there sitting, staring at you. So I do like him, to a degree. And this is not full field odds. We went and pulled these from an overseas book, just so we had them because we were struggling to get them here in the U.S. And that is the problem with these Oppo events. You don't get a lot of time to study and think about it. So if you're seeing these prices at different numbers, they probably will be pretty wild once you get past like 100-1. You're going to see guys that are 5,000-1, maybe 10,000-1 this week, especially the 4-spot guys and guys from Puerto Rico that really just don't have a chance here, to be honest with you. Cristobal del Solar is 200-1. He was like 2,500-1 or something like that at the Mexico Open. Worth a pizza bet. At this number, it's just going to be a no for me. I just kind of want to point out the absurdity of that number. Paul Peterson at 151 does have the experience, Asian Tour experience, Corn Ferry Tour experience. Could be an intriguing guy here at a 150-1. Little too inconsistent for me, a little too short of a hitter for me to really entertain that, but at least wanted to bring that up, point him out there. David Lipsky's also kind of interesting in 150-1, has had some modest success on the PGA Tour, just doesn't have it right at the moment. As with anything, opposite field, you got to be pretty cautious here. The odds started 20-1 for a reason, because you could get someone that wins from 500-1. There's not going to be a big pool of action on this tournament. So if you feel some kind of sense of commitment, you could literally move lines. There's not going to be a lot of liquidity at play here. Most books for these tournaments, unless you see a number that is rampantly wrong. And I didn't really see that here. I would have shouted that from the rooftops, not have just done it in this show to go out to everybody, but to kind of bury it in there. It would have been a, hey, alert, this is really wrong. Get on it today kind of thing. And I don't really see that here. So I think there is some value to be had. I think you can take some risks on either older guys or Corn Ferry Tour grads. Again, you've got some options here. I would not put a whole lot of stock and time into this. I mean, obviously, we're doing a television show about it to talk about the tournament, to give you that information. But if you were going to make some plays on this event, I wouldn't look really at 5s, 10s, 20s. I'd look at only to win, maybe a couple of matchups. But even then, you get the variability of the weather. I would look at weather reports here a little bit, but it's also kind of variable within the island itself, more on the top side of the island opposed to the bottom side. You get a little bit more susceptibility to trade winds and things like that. So it gets very tricky very quickly. I think you got to kind of have 3 or 4 commitments that you like. Maybe a short guy like a Gerard, a middle guy like maybe a Jeremy Paul, or if you want to take a super shot, Blades Brown, find a guy maybe in that 50-60 range. And then take a long shot. Go find someone worth a pizza bet, worth a couple of bucks to give you a sweat. And that's how you enjoy this tournament. Do not put a serious amount of money behind it. Please, please, please. That's going to do it for us today on the show. Thanks so much for watching. Appreciate you. Or if you're listening as a podcast, we appreciate that too. You can watch this show on GNN TV, which is available on the Golf News Net app on Roku. You can watch us on Freecast, Free Live Sports. We got more coming in the next couple of weeks. We'll make those announcements as well, including an updated Amazon Fire app. We're going to be on the Zine, Distro TV, Multi TV, local. Now we've got a whole bunch of stuff. We'll make announcements about that. And you can also listen to us as a podcast. Join golfnewsnet.com. Get access to our tools. $40 for 1 year, $70 for 2 years, $100 for 3 years. Even if you're an existing member, you can tack that on to your membership and just extend it from wherever it was and go from there. That's at golfnewsnet.com. If you have any questions, email me, Ryan at thegolfnewsnet.com, and I am on social media at Ryan Balgi. Thanks so much for watching or listening. We'll catch you on our third show of the week when we talk about the LPGA, LIV, Champions Tour, Korn Ferry Tour, and the DP World Tour. Have a good one, everyone.